Welcome back, everyone, to the Librarium of Ludus Infinium. Today, we have a special little lore video. This is one I've teased for about a week and a half now, one I've really been looking forward to doing. Today, we take a look at an alternate tale. A tale at what might have happened. For our first tale, we look to Horus's fall to chaos, and what may have happened had he listened to Magnus after his injury by the Kennebrak anatheme. So, to be very clear, the only thing I am changing is that when Magnus goes to Horus while he's pretty much in the war, he does not turn traitor, which is what Erebus wants. He stays loyal. That's the only difference I'm going to make. So, I'm going to answer, hopefully, 3 questions in this video. If Horus does not lead the Heresy, who will? And the next question is one that I took way too long on answering. Which Primarchs will stay loyal? Which Primarchs will fall? And this includes, like, will any of the ones that were loyal, will they fall to Chaos? And any of the ones that did fall to Chaos, will they remain loyal? And will there be a big final battle, like the Siege of Terra? And how will that affect the 40k we all know today? So, to answer our first question, who will lead the Heresy? I think this is both very simple and a little bit complicated. At first, I thought of it as which Primarchs that did fall could lead the others. However, I realized that the reason Horus and the Horus Heresy itself was as big of a threat as they were was because he could lead his brothers. He knew which chinks to look for. Not a task I would trust some of the other Primarchs with. Originally, I thought of Angron. And I thought maybe he would bully the others into following him. However, I don't think that would be as feasible as I originally thought. So we'll look at this another way. Without Horus, how will the word bearers convert a big enough force to chaos with a leader who can lead it to challenge the Imperium? After debating this and reading through the lore, I think I may have a reasonable answer. Though not the best case scenario for chaos, it may be the best they will get in this hypothetical. So part 1 of the question. How will they build a big enough force? I believe they can use the warrior lodges to convert, generously speaking, around a quarter to a third of the majority of the legions, with a few exceptions, only maybe being able to get about a tenth to about 5%. And for the second part, who will lead? Well, this one's a little bit trickier to answer, and I have 2 possibilities that I will explore, one of which I think is more likely than the other. So our first heresy candidate is Lorgar Aurelian. Now this might seem strange and grasping at straws and a little far-reaching, mostly because he was not as much of a leader of different groups of Astartes as Horus was. But hear me out. If, and this is a big if, they use the warrior lodges to convert Astartes to the actual worship of the Chaos Gods, he could be seen as the overall religious leader, and that could be enough to kind of bind them all together. Don't think it's really as binding as the original Horus being able to pull them all together, but it's the best I've got. Now the second candidate, and this one's going to be a little interesting. And I'll be honest, if you thought I was grasping at straws with Lorgar, this one goes a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole. Ezekiel Abaddon. Now, I hear everyone screaming and screeching, if Horus is loyal, wouldn't his legion be too? Well, yes and no. The warrior lodges were corrupting even in loyal legions, and I think Abaddon would be a natural second choice to the War Master himself. Also, it's noted that Abaddon had a really close relationship with Erebus, so it is hard to determine how early he started being corrupted. And if he could be turned without Horus, I think he could. But this is also based on later in the timeline. Now, mostly what this is based off of is when Horus gets sealed in the Serpent Lodge, you start to see a lot of Abaddon's anger and bloodlust, which he's already known for, coming out. So I think that would make him an easy target. I think he would be a natural second choice to Horus, but I think, for the sake of argument, I'm going to take the simplest answer and say the new heresy will be led by Lorgar. I can see him having better luck ordering around other Primarchs than I could ever see Abaddon having. I really do think that Lorgar would have an easier time convincing other Primarchs to join Chaos than Abaddon could. So, when I talk about who joins Lorgar and his heresy, I'm going to err on the side of caution, because I can't say for sure, so if I think there is more of a chance of them turning traitor, I'm going to put them in the traitor group. If it's hard for me to justify, even if they were originally traitors, or I think there's more of a chance of them remaining loyal, they will be a part of the Loyalist forces. Let's get this party started with the First Legion, the Dark Angels, and Lionel Johnson. And I'm not going to lie, this was a really hard one to start with. Johnson held a lot of resentment towards Horus. He felt like he should have been the War Master. He was also tricked by Perturabo. After securing many siege weapons, Perturabo, who had already turned to Chaos, tricked Johnson into giving him the siege weapons. So, with these two things in mind, that he hates Horus, not hates him, but he holds resentment for not being the War Master, and that if you could say the right thing, you can kind of make him think your way. I'm going to give him to Lorgar, because I do believe that Lorgar could be able to convince him that we will overthrow Horus because he's not doing his job as War Master, and we'll make you the new War Master. Okay, now on to an actual pretty easy one for me. The Third Legion, the Emperor's Children, and Fulgrim. Traitor. This is really hands down for me because of one simple thing. Before Horus had been stabbed with the Kennebracht Anathame, Fulgrim had already gotten a hold of the Lair Blade. So he was already in the process of being corrupted. I really think it would not change much about Fulgrim. I still think he would be corrupted. I still think he would fall to Slaanesh. I really don't see changing this one event making a difference there. Okay, now for another one that made me think a little bit harder than I probably should. Perturabo and his Iron Warriors. He was already kind of falling to Chaos before, but also was very loyal to Horus. It seems that what caused him to be loyal to Horus was after Horus turned. So I'll say traitor, for the reason of, after he effectively genocides his own planet, a loyal Horus would not praise him, but condemn him, being kind of the last thing that pushes him over the edge, and I believe that would push him fully to Chaos. Now for a Primarch even easier than Fulgrim. Jagatai Khan and the White Scars. In the canonical timeline, he not only refused Magnus, but Magnus and Mortarion to join Chaos, and never felt any urge to join Horus or the Heresy. So this one's a clear-cut case. The Khan's going to stay loyal. Ah, the Space Wolves and Leman Russ. How I loathe thee. And yet, researching you makes my hatred even worse, which I honestly didn't think was possible. But I'm honestly not that split on the Wolves of Fenris. At first I kind of figured their bloodthirsty Viking-ish attitude would make them a little harder to choose. But I'm going to say loyal. There's no reason for Russ to question the Emperor, which he did after the burning of Prospera, because in this timeline it wouldn't happen. Because Magnus, since he reached out to Horus to stop it, and not have to reach out to the Emperor would not have to send Russ to go bring Magnus home. So the entire burning of Prospero would not happen, and Russ would not question the Emperor at all, so there would be no reason for him not to be loyal. Another chapter that I have absolutely no doubts about is Rogel Dorn and the Imperial Fists. Loyal, hands down. He did everything he could to protect the Imperium and bring the heresy to an end. I haven't found anything to make me think this was going to change. Ah, Conrad Kurz, the Night Haunter, and the Night Lords. As much as I want to give them to the Loyalists, seeing as how the one change I'm making has little to absolutely no effect on them, they're going to stay traitors. Speaking of legions that the one change I was going to make would have absolutely no effect on, Sanguinius and his Blood Angels. They're going to stay loyal. I mean, the one change I'm making, it has little to no effect on their loyalty. The biggest change I could see is instead of Horus palling around with Fulgrim most of the time, he's going to pal around with Sanguinius. Oh man. Ferrus Manus. Oh, the Gorgon. And his iron hands. You know, this is one of the things I love and hate about Ferrus Manus and the Iron Hands. There's not much to go on, so this makes this answer easy, but for a bad reason. Well, not really for a bad reason now that I think about it, because when Fulgrim approaches Ferrus Manus saying, hey, we got cookies on the dark side, brother, he's like, I'm going to kill you now. So he's going to stay loyal, because there's really nothing different that's going to happen. Here we go. Finally, back to a good, complicated one. Angron and the World Leaders. And yeah, this one was a little bit complicated for me, because when the Emperor sent Horus to reign in Angron, Horus had already been corrupted, and that's part of what finally pushed him over the edge to chaos. But do I think a loyal Horus can keep Angron from falling to chaos and becoming a traitor? In all honesty, no. I think Lorgar will absolutely be able to manipulate him, as Horus did canonically, by telling him that if you join us, you'll be able to take revenge on the Emperor who devalued you, and the Primarchs who mock you and your legion. However, I do think this will be a little different. I do think there will be more loyal World Eaters in this alternate history than there was canonically, because there were World Eaters that, even though they knew other legions saw them as bloodthirsty killers, they still had respect for the other legions. And one of them that ended up being really big was the Luna Wolves. They valued them as warriors. One that was really interesting, but this happened at Istvan 3, was that the some of the World Eaters, some of the loyal ones I should say, ended up respecting some of the loyal Emperor's children because of their value as warriors and how honorable they were. Because even though they were brutish and they were shock troopers, they still valued honor as warriors. Now for something that I really don't like. Probably my least favorite Legion and my least favorite Primarch. Papa Smurf and his Ultra Blueberries. Rabute Gilliman and the Ultramarines. So, joking aside, they would be loyal. It's unavoidable. They would be loyal. But I do think there's one thing really interesting about them. I do think that just because of how many of them there are, I do think it would be easier for the Warrior Lodges to turn a higher percentage of Ultramarines towards Chaos, just because they're so spread out and they don't have that direct contact with Rabute Gilliman and with the rest of their Legion, so they're a little bit cut off, so they could see it as, yeah, we will join them. Here's one I actually thought would be really easy, and ended up being the one that took me the longest to figure out. Mortarion and the Death Guard. I kid you not, this one took me the longest out of all 18 Primarchs to figure out if they would be loyal or not. So, Horus actually had a difficult time turning Mortarion to Chaos, and only by finally convincing him that the Emperor meddled with the warp was the last straw for Mortarion. So, do I think Lorgar can turn Mortarion to Chaos by convincing him that the Emperor meddled with the warp? Honestly, this is one I wasn't that sure on, but I came up with an interesting argument. It took a lot for Horus to convince him. I don't think Lorgar could convince him with, join us in worshipping Chaos, the warp, because Daddy Emperor does the same thing. I think Horus absolutely has all the right things to make Mortarion turn. I don't think Lorgar has it. But, similar to the World Eaters, I think it's going to be really close to a 50-50 split because of Typhon. And I'm going to explain this from the 4th book in the Horus Heresy series, Flight of the Eisenstein. Typhon holds a lot of resentment towards Mortarion because he feels like he guides Mortarion and the Legion towards worshipping Nurgle. And realistically, he does. He does a lot of it behind the scenes, and no one notices. And I think that alone is going to cause a huge split in the Death Guard. Okay, so now for the first Legion whose destiny is actively changed by Horus heeding Magnus's warnings. Magnus and his 1,000 sons. So canonically, Magnus was loyal up until Russ had broken him physically and almost annihilated his Legion. But if that event doesn't happen, and none of the events leading up to it happen, I think he's not only going to stay loyal, there's no reason to argue that they couldn't be loyal. I really do believe they would remain loyal. But if there are any warrior lodges in the 1,000 Sons, I believe Magnus and the 1,000 Sons would actively put a stop to it due to their knowledge and study of the warp and what Lorgar is trying to do. I do really think that this is probably one of very few legions that would have zero or next to zero of their legionnaires going to the opposite side. And for the other legion, it's just funny how they came back to back. Horus and his Luna Wolves. So, a few things change. One, I don't think he would change the name of them to the Sons of Horus, because they had a lot to do with him falling to chaos and getting bitter towards the Emperor. So if that doesn't happen, I think they would remain the Luna Wolves. I also believe, like I said earlier, instead of getting close to Fulgrim, he would stay closer to Sanguinius and stay loyal. However, I will say this, I do think the Warrior Lodge will take its toll. I think around a quarter of the Legion will go towards the Warrior Lodge. And here's how I make that bold claim. Of the members of the Mournival, originally, canonically, 2 turn traitor, 2 stay loyal. Aximand and Abaddon turn traitor. Loken and Torgeddon stay loyal. I think Aximand will stay loyal because Horus stays loyal. But I do really believe that Abaddon will fall to chaos. And I think on that alone, with the Warrior Lodge having that deep of its roots into the Legion, that it could easily claim anywhere from a quarter to a third of the Legion, so I'm going to lowball it at a quarter. The Word Bearers and Lorgar. I mean, Lorgar's leading the traitors. And in all honesty, it would feel wrong of me to give them less than all of the Word Bearers. So, not only are they getting Lorgar, I'm going to give them the entire Word-Bearer Legion, and say that, like the Thousand Sons, they're going to be one of the legions that it would be hard for the opposite side to get any of them. Now for my daily dose of condescension. Now for the cuddliest of all the Primarchs. Vulcan of the Salamanders. I have a bad argument for this, but it's an honest argument for this. Due to his natural hatred of all things evil and mean to other people, I don't see him being a traitor. Ever. But at the same time, because of all the stuff written about the Salamanders, I also see a lower amount of them defecting due to the Warrior Lodges. So here's how I did this. I gave as a base of the ones that I thought that the Warrior Lodges would get about an even percentage of, 10% of the Legion. I cut that down to 5% for the Salamanders, because I really see for every other legion that the traitors get, only 1, if that, for the Salamanders. So this one I actually had to highball. The 19th Legion. Corvus, Corax, and the Raven Guard. So there wasn't that much I could honestly find on them. But I will say this. What I did find, Corvus Corax had a lot to do under Horus's orders. And he remained loyal. So if Horus remains loyal, there's no reason to argue that Corax wouldn't be loyal. I mean, when Horus turned traitor, even though Corax before that was following a lot of Horus's orders, stayed loyal. If Horus stays loyal at that point, there's just more chance of Corax staying loyal. Oh yeah, the sneakiest of sneaky sneaks. Alfarius, Ormagon, and the Alpha Legion. So, I have found something interesting on him. I don't like it, but I'm going to use it because it was the only thing I could find. Basically, the reason he turned is because the only Primarch he ever interacted with was Horus. Not the best excuse, but fuck it, it's Alpha Legion. So, if Horus stays loyal, there's no reason to argue that Alfarius wouldn't be loyal. I don't see Lorgar being able... Well, if he doesn't even fucking know who Lorgar is, then he doesn't know who Lorgar is, and it doesn't really matter. But, here's something interesting. I'm going to give more of the Alpha Legion to the traitors, and here's why. Due to the sneak nature of the Alpha Legion and their love of all things infiltration and fourth wall rule breaking bullshit, I'm going to give more of them to the traitors, essentially because you don't know how many of them actually turn traitor and how many are just infiltrating the traitors. Onward to the final score. So, the final estimated results that I've came up with, and I used the Lexicanum, I believe. It was either the Lexicanum or the Fandom, and it had the estimated amount of each legion. I used those numbers to determine how many Astartes they would have. I'm not even including humans because I don't want to have to do that math. But here we go. So the traitor forces led by Lorgar with Primarchs Lionel Johnson, Fulgrim, Perturabo, Conrad Kurz, and Angron have about 871,000 Astartes through either their own legions or through the conversion by Warrior Lodge. Now, here's something that I determined kind of interesting. The Loyalists, led by Horus, and not the Emperor, because I don't think, even though the Emperor would want to get involved, he didn't get involved in the Horus Heresy until the very end, and I don't think it would get to that point, but I'll touch on that later. Anyway, the Loyalists led by Horus with Jagatai Khan, Leman Russ, Rogel Dorn, Sanguinius, Ferrus Manus, Rabute Gilliman, Mortarion, Magnus the Red, Vulcan, Corvus Corax, and Alfarius Ormagon, and about 1,359,000 Astartes. Okay, now to touch on what I said about, like a final battle and the Emperor probably not getting involved, not getting to that point. As far as a final battle, such as the Siege of Terra, understand that I am pulling most of this out of my ass. Let's assume it's everyone against everyone. They just, throw themselves at each other. I think that... So, the Horus Heresy was a Pyrrhic Loyalist victory. I don't think it would be that. I don't think it would be a decisive Loyalist victory, but I think they would be better off than the Horus Heresy for a couple of reasons. One, instead of 9v9, it's closer to 12v6. And on the same thing, I do think that there would be casualties, namely one from each side. Specifically, Conrad Kurz and Ferrus Manus. I don't think there's enough of a change for that one event changing for them to escape their fates. I do think Fulgrim would kill Ferrus Manus. I think Conrad Kurz would go absolutely batshit insane, as he had been. And I do think eventually he will get killed by an assassin and let himself be killed. But onward to the upshot for the traitors. I don't think the Loyalists will be able to completely wipe them out. And I do think they will retreat to the Eye of Terror. In a 40k sense, it wouldn't change much realistically, except for a few major things. And this is going down the line 10,000 years. There would be more living loyal Primarchs. The Emperor more than likely would not be interred on the Golden Throne. And as far as chapter or legion, I want to say legions. I want to say they would stick with legions, and I am split on this one. I don't really have a good answer for this. Mostly because two people that Horus saw as his closest advisors were Dorn and Gilliman. So if Gilliman pushes for chapters, I could see Horus agreeing with it, and actually other Primarchs who were against it would probably have an easier time accepting it because of Horus. The only exception to this would be Russ. I don't think, even with Horus accepting it, I don't see Russ ever accepting it. Now, this is all just... I have nothing to back any of these events up actually happening. Now, it could be, that Conrad Kurz could get lucky and assassinate the other Primarch, and with the help of the other traitors, assassinate all the loyal Primarchs, kill the Emperor, blah, blah, blah. I don't see that happening. I'm just saying what I think would be the most likely to happen. So I don't have much to back this up on except for what I've already said. And this is something I might expand on a little bit later. But something I really want to look at, though, or something I really want to do more theory crafting on, is the Legion V chapter argument and how it pertains to Horus and how he would deal with that. Because that's something I'm going to have to do a lot of delving into Horus's character, and that really interests me. But if there are any 30k theories that y'all want me to research, I am enough of a masochist, I will. If there's any specific lore videos you want to see me do, like the Psyche of Horus, or Fulgrim, or whoever, put it in the comment. I leave my Discord in all my descriptions. Check out my Discord. If you don't really want everyone to see what your suggestion is because you're not comfortable with it, DM me. I mean, I'm always willing to at least look at ideas. Even if I don't think it's a good idea, I'll look at it and be like, okay, I'm not going to do it, but here's why. I would never actually just be like, oh, that's stupid. I'd be like, okay, it might not be a bad idea to you, but either I've already covered it, I don't like the idea, I don't think it'll do that well, or it's just an obvious thing. Now, there are some cases that might be a little different as far as obvious things, like one Theorycraft video that I do plan on doing, but I've seen like 4 of, is flipping the Loyalists and Traitors and how that would turn out. Something like that I already plan on doing, but that's going to be a down-the-road thing. But, for instance, if I do that, well, who would fall to which Chaos God? If you want me to do that specifically, I'll probably say, well, that's going to have to wait until I do that video. Something like that. I don't mind. I try and be as accommodating to my viewers as possible. But, with that being said, in the top left-hand corner, I will leave you with my most recent upload. In the bottom left-hand corner, I will leave you with a playlist that I hope you will enjoy. And in the top right-hand corner, if you want to see more of these, or if you really enjoyed it, subscribe. Check out my Discord. Check out, my other... I do a bunch of gameplay. I'm trying to get better about doing lore. Just check it out and see what you like. And if you want to see more of something specific, let me know. But that being said, I will see everyone in the next one. Bye!